Chefs, what is the beef? Chef Fit Podcast, episode 61. And yes, you are hearing this in high fidelity. We've got a new microphone. We've got a new audio setup. I'm no longer fucking screaming at you like I'm talking through an old cardboard tube. Well, actually, you can hear me in full HD.
Cameron, chocolate voice brown.
Chocolate rain. So what we're discussing today before we get a check-in from Petey, basically that low expectations will result in lower standards for yourself. That's today's episode, folks. And we're going to be diving into some fucking serious stuff. Basically diving into how you need to think in order to make a massive change within your life. And anyone that listens to this who is struggling physically, mentally, or whatever, this is going to be one of those podcasts that illuminates to you how you can replicate a lot of the success that you see in the tribe from the outside. And maybe that scares you yourself. It's like, fuck, would I be able to do that? I don't know if I would. We're going to outline that, clarify a lot of that, and show you what needs to happen in order for you to go and achieve things similar to that. I'm absolutely chuffed with this, Mike. I'm fucking chuffed with it.
It's unreal.
It's
on behalf of myself and the tribe. Happy birthday, boss man.
Thanks, pal. Thanks. Another year towards death, folks. We're getting there. We are getting there. Love it. Mark it off. Yeah, what a birthday present. Jesus
I got back onto the Last Dance yesterday after yourselves and Andy's recommendations.
Right.
Yesterday at about 2:00. And now I am 9.5 hours deep.
Fucking the exact thing that we should be talking about before today's episode is The Last Dance.
I'll tell you, I was. Yeah, and I got up this morning and I put a picture of I was in between yoga and EMOM, and it was I don't know, it was 5 to 9 or something like that, and I was out in the garden and I was like, this is because. As cheesy as it sounds, this was because I was watching that yesterday.
MG.
And you know what I mean? As cheesy as it sounds, after watching like 6-7 hours of that last night, I was like, I am going to get up and I am going to fucking suck tomorrow's dick.
Yeah, literally.
And it was as simple as that.
Or it's going to suck yours.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, it was just, put the work in and you get the results.
It's so true.
I need results. I need big results. We all do. Especially during lockdown, because it's so easy for anyone to fall into any way.
Yeah.
With lockdown, like what I keep saying is that I'm doing the workouts and going for runs and stuff like that. But what I'm missing is the calories burned in a day's work compared to a day's. If you take the gym work that I did before compared to the body workouts we do now, if they're the same calorie burns, I'm still missing out on another couple of 1,000 calories burned in a day's work, run around like a headless chicken, plus an hour and an hour on the bike.
Totally. 100%. That's what we don't realise, though.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
So I that was low standards. That's what that was.
Yeah, big
simple
time.
As that.
But it's also mad that, the day-to-day life, like even small things for me, and I'm still with Chef Fit stuff being a full-time job, like I still have my setup here at home and we're still working in a very, very similar life, but just differences in how we're exercising and shit like that, not being able to get to the gym, or not being able to get to jiu-jitsu, for example, fucking 2 or 3 times a week. Just still exercising, still getting it done 100%. But, I know for sure I'm burning less than what I was burning before. And to be honest, I actually can't wait for to be back into a fucking routine again. I've tried in lockdown, I loved it, but now we're kind of getting to a point. It's like, Jesus, what does a gym even look like anymore?
It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mental. It's absolutely mental. That Michael Jordan documentary is a perfect example going into today, and what he was talking about. And I said to Peter about it because I'm not a basketball fan. Like, for anyone, there's a Netflix documentary called The Last Dance, and it's a 10-episode series about the Chicago Bulls, but more importantly, it's about Michael Jordan And I didn't really again, Michael Jordan was kind of retiring when I was a child. So it wasn't something that I watched and I remember as a kid, but I do remember, and everyone knows who he is. And what you notice about how the documentary describes him, you don't really see, but is always there with people who are that high level, is just the insane fucking standard they hold themselves to. And there was kind of this conversation at the end of the program. I think it was one of the last episodes, and talking about the criticism that Michael Jordan got from like teammates, because he would fucking come down hard on bit. Like, I've trained with lads who've gone on to play international rugby, and as lads who play for Ireland now, who I played with a couple of years back, and you meet certain people who hold a higher standard than the regular. You know, like even at the time, I thought I was holding a high standard, and then I'd come across, like I used to play with Dan Levy, who's a flanker, still plays for Ireland now, at a very, very young age. And I was, you know, thinking back to even when we were fucking like 18, 17, and just to think of how hard he trained every day that we showed up. It was 100%, like no fucking mistakes. And if you made mistakes, it's like, do your fucking job. What are you doing, you fucking idiot? You know, and it's that kind of thing. And you could get offended by it, and you realize it is my job. Bollocks. It's fucking right. And it's this whole and Michael Jordan received a lot of criticism from people because he's an asshole. The reality is all he cared about was winning. And if you're not there to win all the time, then it's like, get the fuck out of the way. If I pass you the ball, make the shot. You know what I mean? If not, I'll just do it all by myself, which he did for the majority of his career. But I think for me, I've always been fascinated by people with that level of expectation on themselves. I've always been fascinated with people who hold themselves to that standard, because they go and achieve things that just blow your fucking mind. They go and achieve things that blow your mind. And even in sports, the reason that Jordan's a freak, the reason that he is a freak, it's like you could compare himself to cultural icons like Mike Tyson back in the day. Mike Tyson on his come up, Kid Dynamite, fucking phenom, probably the best boxer in heavyweight history. You know what I mean? However, later on in his career, went to jail, got on the fucking bag, became an absolute deranged lunatic, threatened to eat people's kids, that kind of shit. Like, that's Mike Tyson had periods where he was the best ever and then lost the fucking plot. A lot of sports stars have had that, where they've had their moment in the sun and then they've kind of stepped back. Michael Jordan never had that moment. He always, always, always was the best every single time. I think he had like 2 seasons out of fucking, like, if he started in 1983 and retired in 1999, you know what I mean? And it's like 1 or 2 of those years we've played baseball or some shit. The rest of the time he was just fucking people up all day, never stopped, every single time. And that really feeds into
Tiger Woods' blowout was the best out of a lot of them.
Do you remember his mugshot? Yeah. It was just the debauchery 101. He's fucking buried.
Talk about it all coming out. That was unreal.
What was he at? He had a mountain of coke.
That's what his was.
Yeah, he was an infomaniac.
He was addicted. He was addicted to prostitutes. That's what it was.
What?
But that was so funny. I remember I'm getting off point. I'll be real quick. South Park did an episode of Tiger Woods 2018 or whatever the year was. So say if that happened in 2014, Tiger Woods 2015, the new Tiger Woods game was his missus smashing up cars with a golf club. Fucking love it.
They hardly still call the game Tiger Woods, do they?
No, they stopped after that. Yeah, they just called it PGA, and then it lost all its traction.
Yeah, man, those games used to be fucking. I used to give those a go. Jesus, they're only called PGA now. How's John Madden still getting a game called that? And some lad he used to commentate American football about fucking 30 years ago, and he's still on the game. Mental.
Do you remember? You probably don't, but Nigel Mansell's Formula One Championship. That was a game and a half.
Do yeah, 100%.
That was a game and a half.
Colin McRae rally.
Colin McRae's rally. Again, that's winners for you. You know, that's that winner's mentality, especially Tiger Woods. He missed one shot. The standard he had the Sunday Tiger Woods standard set for him every single time he went to hit a ball. And that's what it takes to become the best that there ever was.
Yeah.
or is, or will be potentially.
Yeah, totally. And what I want to make a massive, massive thing about saying here, because we're talking about people who were freaks, right, in sports or whatever. You know, it's something that gets thrown around a lot is genius, innate, born talent. And people throw these things around. I remember reading a book years ago. It's probably the most impactful book I've ever read, and it's called Mastery by a guy called Robert Greene. And he basically contends that the idea of mastery, of mastering your craft, there's no such thing as genius. People are obviously going to be more fucking adept at certain things. Like Michael Jordan's 6'6". He's physically designed to play basketball, but that still requires, like, you still have to make the most of your fucking genetics and whatever. The idea and what he was saying is that there's no such thing as genius. There's no such thing as like all these moments of genius that you see. Let's say it's Albert Einstein and the theory of fucking relativity. And he's this, I can't even describe, I'm too fucking stupid to properly describe the theory of relativity. But basically he had thought about this problem for fucking 35 years, and he'd contemplated and studied the problem over and over and couldn't figure it out. And it was like, he used this example of two trains converging on the same point. So if you have a train traveling from fucking east to west, and you have another train traveling from south to north, and they're about to meet in the middle, there was something about, you know, the difference between
relativity. The key word is relative. So it was what he was talking about was, mass relative to speed. So if two cars are going 30 kilometers an hour and they smash into each other, they impact at 60 kilometers an hour. But if a car is traveling at light speed and another car is traveling at 30 miles an hour, they crash at light speed, because nothing can go faster than light speed relative to light.
Which is mental. That's mental.
And he did that without any equipment. He did that by thinking about it and writing down sums on the board.
Totally. And the throwaway comment is that, well, he's just a genius. And the reality is he actually had to work at that thing. And if I was to ask someone, it's like, you know, if you spent 35 years contemplating one problem, you know what I mean? Like, when you fail, if the problem is that fucking difficult to find, I say when you find the answer, people will call, oh, he's a genius. And anyone, like, you have to be born with the ability to do that. The reality is, it's the hard work. It's the obsession on the craft and holding yourself to a standard. That is the key. And if we think about taking it into a chef topic or a chef fit podcast topic, you know, low expectations of yourself will equal lower standards. So think about that Michael Jordan thing, where he held himself to that standard. So he would show up before practice, after practice, fucking get as many hours in, get as many reps in as possible, so he's as good as possible. He would also hold other people to that standard. So on the team, if he passed you the ball and you missed the shot, like, you were going to hear about it. It's like, why the fuck did you miss the shot? If I pass the ball to you, you make the shot. And if you don't know how to make a shot, practice till you can. Like, that's the expectation he placed on himself and the expectation he placed on other people. And even though that's quite uncomfortable, because you'd be asked to do something that makes you uncomfortable, even though that is uncomfortable, it forces you to get to a standard. It forces you to fucking sort your shit out and ensure that the next time you come around, you are getting it right. And one of the biggest things that I see on a daily basis, not a weekly basis, with chefs, you know, in the last 2 years that we've had the tribe, I've seen people come in and make such drastic changes in their life. You know what I mean? Like, people come in, and I'll use this example at the end, but I could use several fucking examples. Chefs who've come in, let's say the example is they've come in, they've lost 30 or 40 kilos. That's about 5 to 7 stone. They've completely swapped that chef lifestyle of eating shit, takeaways, drinking booze, and they've swapped that out for fucking 3 solid meals a day, exercising consistently, staying on top of their productivity, organizing themselves, generally just being a more active, disciplined person. And then that change that they make physically and mentally then makes them show up better in their lives. So they're better family, men or women, you know what I mean? They're role models for the people who work with them. They're role models for the kids, or they're able to create a new relationship that they haven't been able to do before. They achieve amazing, amazing things, like really mind-blowing results. But on the other side of the fucking equation, I also see chefs who come in with, all the problems in the world, the same amount of problems, like really struggling mentally, really struggling physically, eating shit, drinking, vices, not being able to show up for your family or in your relationships or in your social life or maybe even in work. It's the same problems that they face, but they achieve nothing, or they achieve very little, I should say. Why? Well, the difference is expectations and standards. Expectations and standards. So let's say a chef comes in, and when we talk to them on the phone, like the conversation that we have, what me or Ella will try and do is try and open you up to the possibility of making a gigantic transformation. Not just people will jump on the call. Why did you apply to join Chef Fit? Well, I just, I want to lose a few kilos, or I want to feel a bit better, or just have no energy, which are all well-intentioned things to say. But the reality is they're not, there's no weight behind those words. Do you know what I mean? There's no weight behind them. There's no meaning behind that. There's no, like, if you feel, oh, well, I want to feel better about myself, you're not going to sacrifice to feel better about yourself. And what we'll try and do when we talk to a chef and consult them is really get clear on the problems. It's like, okay, well, why don't you feel good about yourself? What about yourself are you not liking? Oh, well, fuck, man, I've got no confidence in myself. I'm carrying a lot of weight. I'm sweating, fucking out of breath, up and down stairs. Haven't had sex in months. Okay, cool. Now we're getting to a real problem. How do you feel as a result of not having that confidence in yourself? Well, my relationship is on the rocks. I'm really struggling there. My mental health is the worst it's ever been. And really, I haven't enjoyed life for a long time. And it's like, how long are you going to keep going like this? Well, I can't. I need to fucking sort it out. So do you see the big problem here? Exactly. Like, my life needs to be fixed. And if I just sort my lifestyle out and get my confidence back, all of a sudden those things are going to be fixed. That's a similar process that I'll try and go through with every chef. We're trying to dig deep and find that fucking golden nugget that's going to light a fire within you. And everyone has that. And it just depends on whether you're being 100% honest with yourself. If you've got all the problems, which a lot of chefs do, okay, and if you're joining Chef Fit, like, people either know they do or they don't, but you have those big problems when you come in, we'll help you try and clarify that for yourself in your own mind. But what happens from there? If you know you've got a problem where it's like, I need to fix myself and fix my relationships and fix all of this shit, okay, cool. That's going to light a fire. That's going to lead to you having this expectation. Like, okay, right, well, I need to hold myself to a high standard here because I expect myself to change my life. Whereas if you come in with the, oh, well, a bit of wet, like, if I lost half a stone, that'd be great. How long? 6 months. I get you. I understand, and fair play, but that's a really low expectation. Like, you could achieve that in a week if you really applied yourself. The truth is, because you don't believe that you can achieve anything good, you're not going to hold yourself to a standard that achieves anything good. That's the whole idea. Like, some chefs come
what they think is okay.
Totally.
Well, if I do that, that's amazing. Is it really, though? Because it's, it's not. It's 2 steps away from where you are now. 100%. It's better than what you were, but it fails hugely in comparison to what limitations you think you have on yourself when it comes to setting standards, or what you think is okay. Yeah, is another huge thing. And you see that with chefs a lot, especially younger chefs, where they go, what the fuck's wrong with that? They told me to do that. I did it. Yeah, but you just did it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And do you see that within lifestyle or in the kitchen?
It spills over. You can tell an awful lot from somebody.
Right.
Because of where their standards are of what is okay. And I just have one example in my head of somebody that I worked with before. One of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. Not a very good chef, but his big thing for him, he loved being a chef. It's all he ever wanted to do. But what he thought was okay wasn't anywhere near okay. So for us to say, right, I go to the gym 3 times a week. What do you do in the gym? I just, go to the machines. I do one of them. Yeah. I go up to the ab roller, and sit on my phone, check out some damp yolks, and then I go home. But I went 3 times last week. Do you know what I mean? So there you go. There's extremely low standards,
What did
And
you
we have,
achieve? Yeah.
what did you achieve? Yeah. And, what are your, when you have us set standards, you'll call us out on a bullshit straight away. You say, no. What you need to do is you need to go for this. And in order to do that, then you have to hit these three things. And then the big thing for me, what I'm always saying is, right, I've hit them standards. I've hit them goals, right? The expectations that are there for me. So they're in the past. Once I've hit a goal, it's gone. That goal is done. It's gone. It's not something I'm aiming for anymore. And that, again, that's a mentality thing that you kind of have to have at the start. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, that's going to be hard for you, because then what you're going to do is you're going to say, if you say to me, right, that's the standards that you're setting for yourself, that's a very low expectations. I want you to go higher. But if they don't know that and they're just taking your word for it, then they don't know if what you're setting them is right here. You're saying, you're giving them advice that will bring them to a 6 out of 10. So they're just going to go for the 6 out of 10 because inherently they have low standards.
So where does that come from? Like, if you think about it, and I want to touch on that as well. That's really important. So you think about overall as an industry, chefs are in rag order. That's why Chef It exists. If I was just here to make people feel better, like, that's not what I'm here for. Like, I'm here to change lives. And the reason that I'm here to change lives, without sounding like an absolute fucking wank biscuit, is because there's a lot of people's lives who need to be changed within as an industry across the board. Do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of chefs are on hard times. But the thing that's going to hold you back, as Peter's saying, is that you don't have the belief to expect much of yourself. So therefore, you're not expecting much of yourself. The first question to answer is, where do the low standards come from? Like, in my opinion, I think the kitchen, because if you think about that priority thing, where chefs are conditioned to just prioritize work all the time, and like, you need to be able to hack all these hours and all this pressure and all this stress. You're conditioned to think like that. So when that takes so much out of you and you're so fucking tired and you're so exhausted and mentally spent, that of course you're going to take, like, I think the easy thing to do is to take the easy way out. Like, we've all done it, man. Do you know what I mean? And what I mean by low standards is, I convinced myself at some point, and this is someone who'd been a lifelong athlete, I convinced myself that only training twice a week was okay. And this is someone who, this is me training to fucking be a powerlifter. And it's like, training twice a week was okay. I convinced myself of that low standard because of I blamed my work situation. But ultimately, because I didn't have that expectation of myself, my results showed it. And I didn't achieve anything that I wanted to achieve. That all stemmed from the low standards, but the low standards stem from how the job can beat you down. But it's not necessarily your fault, but it is 100% your responsibility to sort that out, because that will be your biggest obstacle. Yourself. You're not willing to fucking get out of your own way, or you're not willing to expect much of yourself because you don't think it's potentially possible for you. And I think you've got to be very honest at the start and try and differentiate what the fuck is reality and what's a fallacy. Like, what is reality and what's a fallacy? So a lot of fallacies that chefs have, obviously people have different work situations. Some people work insane hours that makes any kind of lifestyle very difficult. Some chefs work 45 to 50 hours, you know what I mean? And what I'm trying to get across to you here is that you've got to be honest and differentiate what the excuse is and whether that's an actual valid excuse. So I don't have time. Like, there was a chef who emailed me the other day. It responded to one of my emails or my posts that I put out, which sometimes can trigger people. It's like, I just don't have fucking time for this. Like, I don't have time to do these things. It's like, how many hours are you doing? 55. So what is the obstacle? Oh, but who the fuck has time to go to the gym? Who has the time to do these things? And it's like, okay, well, like, if I was to really look at your day and how it breaks down, like, you spend fucking at least an extra 2 hours of your morning in bed. You spend your split, an hour and a half split in between shifts, probably sitting on your phone or smoking or doing both. Do you know what I mean? And then the latter half of the night is staying up late and, you know what I mean, having a drink and ensuring that you're not getting good sleep. So the reality is you do have time if you were to make better use of that time. You know what I mean? And if you were to start disciplining yourself, you'd actually create more time. You'd be able to go to bed earlier, wake up earlier. You'd be fucking more energized to get shit done on your split. You have to be able to differentiate what's reality and what's fallacy, because when you believe the bullshit, you'll set these really low expectations. You'll be happy with training once a week and thinking that's fucking, oh, Jesus, that's great. There's a chef lad I know from around here in Melbourne, an Irish guy, and he's like seeing a PT once a week. And like, that's the most amazing thing that he could be doing. And he's fucking super proud of himself, but he's like, he's getting fucking fatter. You know what I mean? And it's like, man, that's because you think and it's the classic chef mentality of, well, I just don't have fucking time for that. So me getting to the gym once a week is fantastic. And it's like, stop doing it for the external recognition. It's you that's the fucking thing that needs sorting out here. So yeah, sure, you might get a pat in the back from someone saying, well done for going to the gym because you're working hard. The reality is, man, you know, your life needs fixing. Your relationship's under pressure. You don't show up. You know, you're fucking struggling mentally. You've got no work-life balance. Like, all of those things are problems, and they need fucking hard work to fix. And when you set an expectation like, I'm happy exercising once per week and that's me, I'm grand. Well, of course, you're going to only achieve fucking results that require training once per week. And those results are fuck all. You know what I mean? Those results don't do anything. So you got to separate what's fact and fiction and break those belief patterns. You can train more than once per week. Do you know what I mean? It is possible for a chef to eat 2 or 3 meals a day. It is possible for a chef to make use of their days off. It is possible to wake up a little bit earlier and get something done before you go into work. Even though a lot of chefs have some self-limiting beliefs that stop them from thinking that that's true, it is true. And the reason that it's true is because I've seen it and proven it to be true. You know what I mean? Like, Peter's a great example. Any chef that's come through chefing and been successful, again, it's the same thing. And we've had chefs who work small, like not a lot of hours. We've had chefs who work gigantic amounts of hours. And that never stopped those people because they set this expectation. So let's say...
Were you surprised, Cam, with like how competitive chefs are? Were you surprised that to find chefs with low standards, or were these people that had low standards overall, or they were great chefs in work and then had very low standards for themselves outside of work, or little to no standards because, you know, work was everything and everything outside of work was, oh, I'm wrecked because of work. Like,
it's a good question. It's a really, really good question. I think there has to be a period where, you know, I think how you do anything is how you do everything. And I think if you're someone who's focused in work and you're willing to, and you're able to really push yourself and apply yourself, then you're capable of doing special things within your lifestyle. Do you know what I mean?
And being a great chef.
And being a great chef. I use my brother as an example all the fucking time. And this is another really, really important example. I remember talking to Keelan, and I used to live with my brother in town, and we used to work together. And Keelan got his star last year, and people will always look at an outcome and go, geez, that must be fucking great. But they don't see what's happening under the surface or how you get to something like that. And I remember he said to me one night, I think we stayed up for a fucking McGregor fight years ago, like fucking 4 or 5 years ago. I think he knocked out Jose Aldo and won the featherweight title. And we were working till, I think we finished work at fucking 12:30. No, I think we got home at 1 o'clock in the morning, stayed up then drinking until fucking 5:30, and then like went to bed for 2 hours and then woke up and went back into work again. I felt like I'd been hit by a fucking bus. He felt like he'd been hit by a bus. But when we went in, it was in for a Sunday service then. And like Sunday lunch, absolutely fucking ramo in the restaurant. And Keelan looked like he was on death's door walking in. And he was on fucking death's door. But he always said, it's like, it doesn't matter how I show up to work. The food is always going to be where it needs to be. The meat is always going to be cooked to the fucking way it needs to be cooked. Everything is going to be done the way it needs to be done. He always had that, like, it doesn't matter what I've done when I'm in and the service is going, the shit has to be on point every single time. And he has that expectation of himself. He was also ill-disciplined as fuck for years. Like, he was literally abused himself in terms of drinking every night, eating shit, not exercising at all. And when he got to 30, he had a great mindset as a chef, but he didn't have any structure or any discipline in his actual lifestyle. And as soon as there was a path laid out for him, and it's like, right, well, this is what you need to do, and you understand the importance of doing it, he was then able to apply that same ethic, that same mindset of working your fucking bollocks off in the kitchen and applying it into what you're doing within your lifestyle. Fast forward fucking 2 or 3 years, he's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, trains fucking hard, he's fit, he's healthy, and he prioritizes it. But I think for sure, but he was unaware of that kind of discipline before he was fucking 31, 32. It was only when it was laid out for him.
He was always a good chef. So he always had high standards for himself in work. He just didn't have them outside of work.
Exactly. And I think that
or did he shelf that?
No, he remained both. Now, Keelan didn't deliberately hasn't had a family. So it's not as if the guy had, he was very focused on his career and on himself to get to that level. Do you know what I mean? Whereas a lot of chefs will struggle because they have that family or they have, kids, and you have more responsibility than that. For him, it was like purely focused on career. This is what I'm going to do. And then when the lifestyle thing came around, it was like, well, I'm going to focus on that as well, because that actually allows me to have sustainability and longevity within my career and to fucking have some balance in my life. So I'm not just spending my days off face down in bed, fucked and not doing anything. So yes, that standard that you hold yourself to as a chef will definitely carry over. And that's actual standards, folks. That's not just ego standards. I know I'll hear a lot of shit like, oh, well, I'm a fucking machine in the kitchen. I think someone's name it rhymes with Pat Cushton is the name it rhymes with. But it's like, talking a big game, but the reality is you're not fucking like, oh, well, I'm fucking, when I'm in work, I'm absolutely smashing it. And that's thinking that you're smashing it. And then I can tell, because when you did Chef It, it's like you didn't show up. You fucking did the video and talked up about what you were going to do and you did one run, and then you did like 3 videos about that fucking run, but you couldn't string 2 weeks together. You couldn't string 3 weeks together. So that was just ego. And there's a difference between having ego and thinking you've got really high standards and actually having really high standards. You can fucking see high standards. You know what it looks like. And chefs who do have high standards come in and apply themselves. Like I could tell you had high standards for yourself when you came in. I could tell you were a bit more switched on than the regular person. You were already kind of thinking on that. So it's like, I know how you would operate in the kitchen because of how you've operated within your lifestyle within Chef It. And that's a very, very true statement. You know what I mean? You'll hold yourself to that same standard. So guys, if you expect yourself to not achieve much, you're not going to achieve much. Whereas if you expect yourself to achieve something great, you'll go and achieve something great. So a chef that I'll talk to on the phone and a consult, it's like, oh, fuck, well, I could never have a 6-pack. And it's like, it's not that you need to have a 6-pack, but you've already told yourself you're not going to get it. So you have this real low expectation. So what are you going to do? Well, you'll probably only lose 2 or 3 kilos and then you'll be happy with that. You'll be satisfied with that. Whereas if you were to say, I want to get the 6-pack, I am going to get the 6-pack, even if that might be a bollocks vanity goal, whatever. Even in you stating that to yourself and expecting that from yourself, you're going to rise to the standard. You're going to take the actions necessary to sort it out. Like, the thing about the expectation is the goal, pretty much. Like, what goal do you set yourself? Where do you want to actually go with the whole thing? Well, if you can understand that a fucking serious goal will require serious commitment from you. And when you know that this goal requires serious commitment, you're going to sacrifice and make the fucking time to do it. That's an old balancing act there, is it? The old...
Yeah, effort, expectations on one side and results are on the other. And they're fucking bang on the same.
Exactly. 100%.
And no matter what you do, there's nothing you can do that's going to tip that balance. The effort and what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. Exactly. And I just drew that because I was trying to think of a way to put it that they're absolute.
Yeah.
If you don't put the work in, this isn't going to go up or down.
Uh-huh.
If you put everything into it, this is going to stay at the same level. because the exact amount of energy that you put into it is results that you're going to get out of it. And that's it, expectations and results.
Yeah, they go hand in hand. And when you don't expect much, you're not going to take action. When you do expect a lot, you are going to take action. So that's why it's really important before you set off in any kind of lifestyle change that you're really focused on what you're trying to achieve. Like, what are you here to do? Why are you doing it? Like we did an episode, what's your why? The reason that having a good, solid reason why, AKA I want to, sort my mental health out and fucking fix my life. I need to lose this weight so I can get my confidence back. Why do I need my confidence? Well, my sex life is buried. My relationship, I don't have one. I'm very unhappy with that. Like, those are deep reasons. And those are drivers and motivators because you're motivated to fix those things. So when you have at the initial stages, you must be clear on that for you. Everyone's going to have their own individual thing. You must be clear. So thinking about it then, serious problems require serious commitment. And an example that I'll use, Kenny Cuff probably won't mind me saying about it, but or talking to him about it. Like, Kenny Cuff is one of the chefs who first came in. He came in with Peter, and Kenny lost 42 kilos overall in chef fit in a year, 42 kilos. And he went from someone who was drinking 2 liters of Coca-Cola a day to, and eating takeaways every single night, 6 nights a week. He was eating takeaway when he came home, eating shit, not taking care of himself, never exercise, and always trying different diets and whatnot. And he was self-admittant. He was like, when he would try a diet, he never really believed that it was going to work for him. So he never followed it through. So he'd give up after a week or two. And when he spoke to me on the phone, he was shitting himself and he was scared. He was scared because he thought he was going to fail again. And that's something that will hold a lot of chefs back, is that belief. The reason that you set the low expectation is because you don't really believe in yourself, which is fair enough, because you've been beaten down by your lifestyle. And of course, when you feel like shit, you're not going to believe that you are shit. So for him, he was scared at first, but he knew he had to commit to it, because by me clarifying for him, we're having a conversation, he's like, I'm scared that when I go to have a family, I'm not going to be able to have a family. And the reason is because I believe my health is in such disarray right now as a chef that I'm fucking abusing my body, that I honestly don't know if I'm going to be able to fucking be a father. And that scared the shit out of him. But it was a true statement. It was a true statement. And when we were talking, that's what we were able to get it down to, whittle it down to that. And it's like, okay, well, like, Kenny, how long are we going to keep going like this? Like, can you sustain? Where are you going if you don't fix this in the next year? Well, won't have a family. I'm going to get fucking heavier and heavier. And potentially down the line, I'm going to be looking at, I'm at risk of heart disease or fucking, some kind of, diabetes, whatever. And even though at the time he didn't believe that he could achieve all of these things, he knew it was a problem that required his 100% effort. And in the process, when he was like, okay, well, I need to sort this shit out. So we started, and he lost 12 kilos in 4 weeks. And started changing the habits immediately, started changing his fucking way of operating immediately. And he was doing it within the tribe. So the tribe kept him accountable and kept him coming back over and over and over again. And if he had a bad day, he'd always come back and sort it out. If he had a bad week, he'd always come back and sort it out, because the tribe of chefs would always bring him back to get it sorted. Now, as we identify that, it's like over the course of Kenny losing that 12 kilos in 4 weeks, all of a sudden something got sparked in him where he was like, oh shit, I'm making some headway here, man. I'm actually starting to really see progress. So all that, like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, I don't know if this is going to work, that fear of failure went away, because he started pushing himself initially to get the result. And when he started getting initial results, that spurred him on to get more and more and more. So you're not just going to watch a podcast or something or click a finger. What is that noise? Sorry, my microphone is actually so good. I'm fairly sure I'm actually picking up Peter from fucking the other side of the world. Oh no, it's Ella. Sorry. So within the initial couple of weeks, he nailed it down, lost 12 kilos, and he didn't have that belief at first. He maybe didn't think he was able to, but the severity of the problem, you couldn't give up on that. It's like, man, do you want to fucking have a family or not? Because the only thing that's stopping you, like, are you really going to go back to stuff in your face, eating shit and not doing fuck all when you know that's a problem? Yes or no? Any man that turns their back on that, and I've seen a couple, it's fucking pathetic. That's the truth. And I'm not going to fucking beat around the bush. And that's not just chefs. That's a man in general. If you've got problems like that and your family is under pressure, you know, fucking step up and sort it out. No fucking bullshit. No pat on the back. Get your shit together. So when you understand that, and anyone with character will know that that's a problem worth fixing. He knew it was a problem worth fixing. He didn't know whether he was going to be able to sort it out or not, but fuck, he was willing to give everything he had to sort it out. So in the initial 4 to 5 weeks, got the result, and then the momentum started to get built. And he's like, okay, well, actually, maybe I can really fix this. I can sort this out. And he never stopped. And since fucking day one, something happened in that process where he had this expectation where it's like, okay, I can actually do this, which he realized after 3 or 4 weeks. I can actually do this. Now, the only thing that's stopping me is me. So I must expect to get everything done on a week-to-week basis. So let me give you a more practical example. Within Chef Fit, what's a week look like of exercise? Okay, a week of exercise is 3 gym sessions and 3 cardio sessions. At the moment, it's 3 bodyweight workouts because we're in lockdown and 3 cardio sessions. That's what we lay our calendar out as. And when you're getting 3 and 3 done every single week, you're smashing it. And Kenny would have an expectation that I have to get 3 blues and I have to get 2 or fucking 3 greens done every week. And if I drop below that standard, I'm fucked. That's the expectation he placed on himself. Whereas I have seen chefs come in who probably needed to sort themselves equally as much as Kenny did. And they come in and it's like, you're told to do 3 and 3, but you do like 1 and 2. Why? Oh, well, you know, like fucking this happened. And it's like, yeah, how are you justifying getting that little done? That's the problem. You're justifying it instead of actually going, fuck, I should have got this shit done. I need to do this. I need to sort it out. And Kenny, through that process, started expecting a lot from himself. Because he expects a lot from himself, the standard, the bar he sets is very high. Okay, a shit week for me is 1 missed session out of 6. Whereas a low standard is, well, if I miss fucking half my sessions, like at least I got something done. Low expectation. Bullshit. So the standard gets set high because the expectation is high. And when you hold yourself to a high standard, you achieve incredible results. When you don't hold yourself to a high standard, you will fall by the wayside and you'll start blaming other shit when you're the problem. You'll start blaming other shit when you're the problem. And that works for anyone's goal, no matter what it is, no matter what fucking problem. You need to identify the problem so you have a fire in your belly to fix it. You need to really commit yourself to fixing that problem. And in the process of doing the work, you're going to actually open up the possibility that you're able to really get it sorted and achieve something great. That's when your expectation gets raised. That's when your standards meet it. And something I'll always say to the chefs within the tribe is that, you know, this is your responsibility. This is on you. Like, I can't hold your hand and do the work for you. Even though I can lay the path out, we can hold you accountable. Peter can fucking give you a shout. Andy can give you a shout. Anyone we can support you and drive you forward and call you out if need be. But the reality is we can't show up into your life and do the work for you. You need to fucking do that. It's on you. It's your responsibility. And for Kenny, he knew that was his responsibility. And for any chef that's changed their life drastically, they knew it was their responsibility. Again, if you set a low expectation, you're going to get no results. If you set high expectations, you're going to get great results. Why? Because you'll hold yourself to achieve something great, whereas you won't hold yourself to any kind of standard to achieve something mediocre. And that is the facts of the situation.
Look at Kenny now. Great chef, great father, great husband, great fucking compadre to all of us. And that is because he put the work in, and then he set high standards and he smashed them, and then he set goals and he smashed them, and then he set goals again, more lofty goals, and he smashed them. And he's like, right, as soon as I get that, that's old news. What's next? Exactly. He always has this high standard for himself, and it shows now with who he is.
And the standards still remain. And even though the main goal was achieved, like 40 kilos, 6.5 stone, you know what I mean? Like, that's fucking mental.
That's 30 years onto his life.
Yeah, literally. And totally fucking changed everything and had his family. But the funny thing is, another big problem that I'll see is people will, and this is, it's instant gratification. It's short-term thinking, where you think okay, I'm going to really push myself to achieve this goal. And then once you achieve the goal, you drop it completely because you've climbed the mountain. Kenny never did that. Kenny always was able to achieve his thing and then hold himself to a standard. He still had the expectations of himself. It's not like the game is over. If you drop the ball completely, you're running the risk of going back into that pit that you were in before you started. The idea is that you need to embrace it as a way of life. Holding yourself to a high standard of discipline is a way of life. That's just the way it is now. That's just the way it is. And the reason that that's the way it is because that's what makes you happy and fulfilled. That's what got you to the dance in the first place, was actually applying yourself discipline-wise. And that, why would you do that? Why are you able to achieve something great and then carry on from there? Well, it's being aware that the goal isn't the fucking be all and end all. Like if you just say, well, I'm going to lose 40 kilos. I don't think Kenny's goal was to lose 40 kilos. I think Kenny's goal was to sort out how he was living his life and really, you know what I mean? And get himself to the point where he's not eating shit and he's actually living an active, healthy life that fulfills him and allows him to show up as a role model for his kids. That job never goes away. That's always going to be there. And it doesn't, like, if your thing is just, oh, I want to lose the weight, well, cool. You're not seeing past that. You're just, okay, well, once I've lost the weight, then nothing else needs to change. It's you that needs to change. It's not necessarily just you rising to meet the goal. That's what I want to get across to people. So yes, having like an outcome like that is fantastic, but it's not the be all and end all. It's what comes with the territory of losing that. That's the key. What habits, routines, and fucking rituals that you build for yourself, that becomes a way of life. And then it's about having the standard of going, this is just how I do things now. I'm not going to go back to that same old shit again. That's the key. Is my microphone working? Yes, it is. Sorry, I thought yes, I had a bit of static. Oh, you better believe it is, son. So yeah, like that's today's episode. Just ask yourself, and what I'd ask anyone
as well, going back using MJ as an example, well, all he wanted to do was to get that championship ring, and the very next day, all he wanted to do was to have two. Yeah, you know, that was his standards and his expectations. Once he reached his goal, he set his new goal, and he moved on. So he always has these high standards for himself.
Exactly, and it's never ending. So like David Goggins is another great example. Like, fuck me, that's a disgusting standard to hold yourself to. If anyone doesn't know who David Goggins is, fucking look up a YouTube video of that guy or read his book, Can't Hurt Me. Fucking good Lord. That's There's terrifying.
A fucking rabbit hole for you.
Yeah, that's a serious rabbit hole to go down. But that's another example of just his expectation is to absolutely brutalize himself every single time and destroy the inner bitch, let's say. You know what I mean? Where it's like, there's no, I'm running a fucking 100-mile race and I've never run it before in my life, but I'm going to fucking do it. And he ended up like shitting himself and fucking his body broke down. He had a broken ankle, like all sorts of mad shit. And it's because he set that standard so high that he expects himself to do it. It's like, it's just about every human being has that kind of ability, but it's all in your fucking head. It's all in your head. It's what do you expect yourself to do? You know what I mean? And I think his story is so inspiring. It's because he was such a fucking normal, mediocre guy before. He was the guy who was a fucking like an exterminator. He used to kill roaches for a living. You know what I mean? And he was a big fat guy eating shit all day and eating burgers 2 or 3 times a day. And he was sick of himself. He was sick of how he was operating. It's like, I'm going to... And he literally set out to kill that part of himself and make himself into a new, stronger, better version. All stemming from expectations and standards. So all I'd ask of you as you listen to this episode and as you walk away from it is like, what do you... If you're looking to make a lifestyle change, what are you expecting within that change? You know what I mean? And the reality is, if you stay on the surface and it's like, I want to lose a bit of weight or I want to feel a bit better about myself, then that's all you're going to achieve. Whereas if you dig a little bit deeper below the surface, and every human being can find a deep fucking rooted reason, but if you dig below the surface and you start asking yourself some tough questions and get clear on some of the facts, like if you want to lose weight, why is your weight a problem? You know, oh, well, health problems down the line, confidence in the short term, relationships affected, I can't lead in the kitchen. Like, start asking yourself those questions and start digging a little bit below. Why is your mental health a problem? Well, I'm so depressed I can barely get out of bed. Okay, do you have a family? Yes. How do you show up for your family? Well, I can't. I make excuses to not play with my kids, digging below the surface. You know, whatever your thing is, I've always hated how I've looked. I've always hated how I'd looked. Every time I look in the mirror and I'm like, fat fuck. You know what I mean? Like anyone that struggled with weight or confidence has said that to themselves. That's horrible. But that will light the fire, as opposed to, I just want to lose a bit of weight. Like, fucking go deep so you can light the fire. And when you light that fire, what's going to start happening is you're going to expect yourself to fucking, to really go and do it, to really go and sort it out. Whereas if you just stay on the surface with the flimsy bullshit, you're going to get flimsy bullshit results. Dig deep, find something that lights a fire in you, and then the expectation is there. When that expectation is there, you're going to expect yourself to rise to the standard. And for every chef that comes into Chef Fit, my process is to light a fire in you so that when you do fucking come in, that you're in the space mentally where you're not fucking dropping the ball easily. You know what I mean? You're not just giving up after a week. You're staying consistent. And then the tribe will take over and it'll start to become a way of life, and the tribe will always keep you coming back. And that's why you see chefs who are able to sustain their efforts, not only for a couple of weeks, but for months and years, and achieve incredible things. So again, that's the process to go through, guys. And
we'll see if I'll be eating my own words in 3 weeks when I do my first duathlon. With 3 weeks training. Let's go.
But there you go, but that's another fucking perfect example. You know what I mean? And
I've set that now for me. I just got it in. We got it into our head, me and one other guy in the clan, and within 30 seconds, we had this sorted. And it was like, right, 10K run, 40K cycle, 5K run.
There you go.
Like, right, so I can do a 10K in an hour. I'm going to give myself an hour and 10. With no traffic, I cycle at 25 kilometers an hour. So I'm going to give myself 1 hour and 40 minutes to do the cycle. And then the last 5K, I could do a 5K in 23 minutes. I'm going to do that one in 35 minutes.
There you go. You know,
that's what I'm at the setting for myself. In order for me to do that, I need to dedicate myself to that for the next 3 weeks. It'd be great if I had 6 months to do it. But if I had 6 months to do it, I'd take 6 months to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I had 5 months to do it, I'd take 5 months to do it.
But
so I'm going to push myself now to get to where I want to be in a low amount of time. And you know what I'm like. I get shot in the leg the day before, and I'm still gonna. I can always go through. I can always push through pain and stuff like that. But with this, it's not just about crossing the finish line on the day. I'm after setting a good high standard for myself.
But it's the challenge in that. And let's say, and that's another example that we potentially forgot to mention. It's like that example of maybe your thing isn't like the world is ending and I need to stop my world ending, which is potentially a lot of the situations that I find with chefs. Maybe it's, Peter's example, or even my own example was like, we've kind of gotten to a point where we fixed a lot of those problems and that's all kind of boxed off. Okay, well, like, what's the next step from there? Well, even the challenge of doing something extremely difficult will force your expectations to rise and your standards to rise. Like, do you remember the 10K challenge we did the other week? Because the reason that we did the 10K challenge, I did it to prove a point. Because I see, and myself included, putting a limiter on ourselves. I go for a run on my fucking, obviously I have an ankle injury at the moment and I'm blaming that and using that as a fucking excuse. So that week, I'd injured it over the weekend and I challenged the entire tribe. It's like, you're going to run 3 10Ks this week. I'm not a runner and I rarely run over 5K. And with the ankle being busted, I fucking haven't been pushing that at all. In that week, I forced myself to do 3 10Ks. And no, my ankle was not comfortable. I was in a lot of pain doing it at times, which probably wasn't smart. But it was in that lofty challenge that I raised that bar for myself. It's like, before I would have said, okay, right, that's fucking, a quick 2.5K, that's 3 to 4K, cool. Like, I've fucking got my run done. And then it's like, no, motherfucker, like, you could do 10K if you actually tried. And that's not even a thought that I had entertained before. Managed to do 3 10Ks in the week. Okay. And that's like, oh, fuck, right. Let's set something lofty for yourself that means something, and you're going to rise to that. And when your standards rise, you're going to get the results. So the biggest mistake that you'll make is setting really small goals. really like, and that's what I'm saying about finding a deep reason. Like if you set small goals, you're not going to be motivated to push to get those goals. Whereas if you set something really lofty, like him, the duathlon, when the gyms open up back again within Chef Fit, we're going to do an internal transformation for 8 to 12 weeks. And it's like the expectation is going to be get in the fucking best shape of your life, and this is the standard, and everyone's going to have to rise to that standard or they're fucking out of there. They won't be allowed in to do it. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, even if you've gotten to a point where you've developed the habits and the routines and all of that shit and you've achieved initial goals, you still need to have lofty challenges to go and achieve. Those lofty challenges will then force you to get yourself into a mode where you're pushing consistently and holding a high standard for yourself. That's a simple,
permanent winner's mentality.
Exactly. There's always a fucking mountain to climb. Always put a mountain in front of yourself, because that forces you to climb higher and higher and higher. If you never put mountains in front of yourself, you're just going to be fucking walking on flat land with nothing going on and no results to show. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Make sure that you've subscribed to the channel on YouTube. Also, Podbean or iTunes, give us a 5-star review. Make sure you've subscribed to the channel on them, and share this on social media platforms, and make sure you've tagged a chef who needs to hear it. If you see a chef who's always trying diets and different lifestyle changes without really ever achieving something, tag them in it. You know what I mean? Or if that's you yourself, like the video and let us know you enjoyed it. That is our episode.
Get in touch.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're looking to join Chef It and actually fucking adopt that mindset, as I said, and set those expectations and achieve things like Kenny or Peter, get involved. Message the page, either Instagram or Facebook, Chef It or Chef It Elite on Instagram, and we'll see you in church, folks. That is our episode for today.
Outwork me.
Exactly, chaps. Right, folks. First episode of our fantastic microphone. See you in the next one. Be good.
Yeah.